Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Pride's Trans Lounge. I'm Gina Bigham. I'm actually the program manager of the Trans Lounge at the Los Angeles LGBT Center.
And I'm Luckie Alexander, the founder of Invisible Men.
We are so excited to have you here with us today. We've got an amazing lineup of some really special, really powerful trans activists and individuals. We're going to be hearing today from comedian Ian Harvie of Transparent and Will and Grace, the amazing activist, she's Wonder Woman as far as I'm concerned. Blossom Brown is with us. From the center of Long Beach, the fabulous Mallery Robinson is also going to join us. And lastly, the amazing, wonderful, the iconic Bamby Salcedo of TransLatin Coalition is going to join us.
Oh my goodness, this sounds phenomenal, Gina.
Lucky, we have got it all set up. We're going to get in depth with some of these amazing folks, talk about issues of the day, talk about the trans community, where we're going, what's coming next. Let's get right into it.
Our first guest is an acclaimed comedian and actor. He made his acting debut as Dale on the critically acclaimed Golden Globe and Emmy Award-winning TV series Transparent on Amazon. He stars as Bud on the revival of Will and Grace, Michael on the ABC soapy nighttime drama Mistress, and is Chris on Freeform's hilarious millennial sitcom Young and Hungry. Ian debuted his comedy special, the world's first trans comedy special, May the Best Cock Win, which is available to stream via Amazon. Please welcome Ian Harvie.
Hi, Ian. Lovely to see you.
Nice to see you both.
Quick question right off the bat. Okay, what is the difference? I hear some people say comedian or comic. In
What's
terms
the
of,
difference?
we always want to be, we're always being respectful of people's pronouns and everything else. So we want to be respectful of your comedy title. Comic or comedian? Is there a difference?
I think comic is for people of a certain age, which is generally older. Like, I think, 40s and up often say comic. Like, I'm a stand-up comic. Comic is short for stand-up comic. And then I think maybe some younger folks tend to say comedian, but that's my first initial thing, but it's the same thing. So yeah. It's just a personal preference. It's kind of like, whatever your personal preference is on your pronouns. I think comics have a personal, whatever their affinity is to, if they're, idols, comic idols are people who identified as comics rather than comedians, then they might, if they're like, Bill Hicks was the best comic on the planet, I'm a comic. Like, okay, that's your influence. I think it's probably whoever you're influenced by. And I think I go by both, I'll say both. I'm one of these people that, not just in like my queerness, but in my careerness, I'm definitely an identity collector.
Nice.
I don't give up one identity, become another, right, necessarily. And although I look like this, I definitely still feel very much like a dyke on the inside. Like, politically, I'm a dyke, I'm not, politically, I'm not a white man. I'm a trans man who was raised as a dyke in the dyke community for 30 years before transitioning. So I don't know. I like to collect lots of things that feel right to me. And I still feel right about dyke. I still feel right about trans man. I feel right about comedian. I feel right about comic. So
it's funny that you say that, because that was actually going to be one of the questions we were going to talk about. Was something that I had seen in your bio was about you had decided to keep an F on your gender marker on your license.
Yeah, F, because I like to mess with people. I'm like, I think this is a good conversation starter. I was doing a bunch of shows on a cruise ship, and before I got onto the boat, someone that was checking me in onto the ship was like, oh, you know that there's a F on your, I'm like, yes, I'm aware. Like, you think, like, I've been in possession of this my entire life and I just didn't notice. So yeah, that kind of, I just think it's like, yeah, I knew, and people would just, cock their head, or, so I'm not afraid of that. I also feel like it kind of keeps me footed in the queer community in a way. And, the only time that that's important to me is when I travel abroad and I might be going to a country that might be unsafe or feel a little bit more unsafe. That's when I've wished that I had a passport that said M on it. But other than that, I just feel like it keeps me rooted and bound to the queer community, and in a way that makes me feel good inside that nobody else is generally aware of.
And that's I think that one of the things that's so important about our queerness, and for trans and non-binary folks especially, who oftentimes struggle with finding that identity and that authenticity, and being able to let that out and let it shine.
Well, and that it can be a combo of so many things. I know people who have been out and understanding their transness for 30 years and have done things that they have later admitted that they didn't know they couldn't do it another way. Meaning, and this is to say that everybody should be able to customize their own gender, and whatever that means to them in medical, physical transition or not. Whether it's a name change or not, whether it's surgery or not, whether it's hormones or not, whether it's a taking a different pronoun or not. Right. So I know people who have, wish that they knew that they didn't have to do all these things in order to say who they were. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's such a nice way to be today, to be able to sort of have this buffet of choices that you can sort of put together and figure out who you are, and that can change, and it can change again, and it can change again. And what I found for me is that this is what it looks like. On my license, there's an F, and that and this is a positive word for me, and I apologize, but like, I'm pretty faggy in my sort of presentation of things. I'm kind of like butch and faggy and queer, and yes, it looks like this, but I'm also who I'm partnered with I don't know, it's just like, I just think that it's a beautiful world today that you can just make it whatever you want it to be. And that's, and it wasn't necessarily always that way, because there were definitely community or society pressure to be in the binary before, and you're just not required that today. And I think that that's really, really beautiful.
Fantastic. Absolutely. I have a question. A few weeks ago, Netflix dropped the new Dave Chappelle special, 846, on YouTube. And it had almost 7 million views in the first 24 hours of the release. What do you think the role that comedy can play in addressing systemic racism that's running rampant in this country right now?
First, I just want to admit that I've only seen clips of the special.
Okay.
As of yesterday.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So my attention has been solely on like legitimate news. And I'm not saying Dave Chappelle's special drop on YouTube is not legitimate news. It is. But I have been so deep dived into reading and fact finding, and so I just honestly haven't felt very funny or even watched much that's been funny. So the only thing that I know about his special was that it was set up in the one that was set up in an out. It looked like he had rented like an outdoor space to address. Is this the one that? Yeah.
I think
yes, the half-hour special.
Yeah, to address COVID-19 concerns and precautions. So the only thing that I know about the special, and please forgive me, is that it was people were seated outside, very far apart, on what looked like a slice of farmland that people drove up and sort of parked, and everybody wore masks and were, COVID-19 safe and that sort of thing. But outside of that, I apologize that I haven't seen the special. But to your question, I think comedy in the role of racism I think one of the greatest things about comedy is that it is so disarming, and that when people sit down together to listen to a comedian, no matter what their perspective or what their background is, but in this case, a Black man getting up to talk about race, and to do it in a way that is funny, when you have an audience of people whose shoulders have relaxed and their ears are open, and that they may not necessarily have been a fan, but if you can reach somebody and make somebody laugh about something that's true, I think it's one of the greatest ways to change people's ideas about things and understand things. And and from my own experience of going on stage and talking about being trans, what I learned was, if you make it funny and you make it about your story, and you met that combo, it's inarguable. So you get on stage and you tell your story as a Black person, I'm not talking about me, as a Black person, you talk about your experience and you make it funny. It is an inarguable truth. Right. And it reaches people in a way that, and what people don't understand about comedy is that it's actually very intimate. It's a very intimate exchange. People think because you're laughing that it's not intimate, but laughing together is actually a very bonding experience. And so I think that it's an incredible way to make change, to let people hear a truth, and that you can laugh about it and think about it, and you go home with it and you think about it more, and it goes through your head, and you might even laugh again because of the irony and just the truth of it and how brilliant that was crafted. And then you will carry it with you in the future. And the next time that somebody says something about all lives matter, which is fucking ridiculous, that's not the point, that you can actually have a new context for what to say, in that moment. Like, actually, for me as a trans person sharing about my transness, I gave people a context for trans people that they had never seen or heard before. So the next time they came into contact with someone who was transphobic, they were like, wait, I know that this isn't actually true about trans people, because I now know one. I know someone who is trans, and that's actually not how it is. So they have a new context for, in this case, race and racism, and that, if someone, writes a joke about the fact that slavery never ended, and here's how, that later on, when someone says slavery was over, over 150 years ago or whatever, he's like, you can actually go, actually, no, it wasn't, and here's why. So you can educate people through humor, and I think it stays with people almost longer because they've had this intimate experience with a group of people. And I don't know, I just think that it's one of the most precious ways to learn something new and bond over is through laughter.
I definitely agree, and I appreciate that. Gina, I know you have a fun question for our guest.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's really beautiful, Ian. You know, again, going through your bio, I know because I was too. I read that you grew up obsessed with the Carol Burnett show.
Oh yeah, yeah. I grew up obsessed with lots of things. I was like, wait, obsessed. Yeah, I was obsessed with Carol Burnett. I loved her so much, and I loved the ensemble that she put together. Really, of some of the most brilliant sketch comic performers ever. I probably one of my favorite. And the costumes, right?
The costumes were amazing.
One of my favorites, and this is probably one of lots of people's favorites, is the Gone with the Wind. She has the curtains from the drapes on as her dress, coming down that big winding staircase, and that's probably one of my favorites. One of the other favorite, anything with Tim Conway. I was so sad when he died, and he's one of those people that anything that he did, one of my favorites because he reminded me of my dad. My dad died like a month ago, and yeah, and complications of Parkinson's. But my dad became very slow in his movements, and so when Tim Conway did the like World's Oldest Man sketch. And moved really slow and just shuffled across the floor. It's exactly what my dad was like at the end, and it was really freaking adorable. But my mom and I just recently shared that video from like YouTube, like sent it to each other, and we're laughing about how cute it was and that it was just like my dad. I'm trying to think. The dentist.
Of course, yes.
The dentist. That's probably maybe even above like sort of the Gone with the Wind sketch. I would maybe even say the dentist because Tim Conway in that was just incredible. But I'm always amazed too when comic actors, sketch actors like Carol come out and do these like dramatic roles. Like they go do an hour, procedural on like Law and Order, you know what I mean? And that they're so great. I thought the same thing about like Robin Williams, was like, he was so brilliant as a comic, but then like he played these amazing, heartfelt and evil characters as well. So anyway.
I know one of my favorites was always Mr. Tudball and Mrs. Hobiggins.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
Mrs.
Hobiggins, can you come in here, please? Oh God, that just got me every time.
I'm gonna go watch sketches right now.
I love this.
Awesome. Well, Ian, it was a pleasure to have you, and so grateful to have you. Chat it up with us. Is there anything that you'd like to plug before we move on to our next vote?
No, I want to plug Black Lives.
I appreciate you. Just for the minute of that, I definitely appreciate that.
I love you and thank you for having me, and happy Pride and Black Lives Matter. And for all of our friends out there, please elevate Black voices at this time. And just that I love you.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
We appreciate you.
Thank you, Ian.
Thank you both.
Mallery Jenna Robinson is a transgender woman who works as an engagement specialist and service navigator at the Trans Health Program at the LGBT Center in Long Beach. She's a native of Montgomery, Alabama. Mallery moved to Long Beach, California in June of 2019, which was just last year, and was quickly hired at the center. She has been at the center for 11 months and loves salsa dancing, hiking, and going to the beach and spending time with her loved ones. She comes from a very supportive family, including her mother, her father, 4 brothers, as well as a host of extended family and friends. She began her gender journey at the age of 16 and never looked back. She has a double bachelor's in history and biology, and currently working on her master's in social work at California State University. Please welcome Mallery.
Dramatic entrance, yes. Mallery, hello.
Hi, hello everyone.
How are you? was so nice to have you with us.
Thank you, Luckie and Gina. Luckie, thank you for that fantastic introduction. So I am so excited to be here. I'm completely grateful and humble for this opportunity.
We're grateful. We're the grateful ones. We get to see your smiling face. We're so happy to have you.
Oh, thank you.
I'm going to jump right in. And with first question, actually, with everything that's going on, everything that's happening in the community around trans women of color, and the violence that's being inflicted at such a high rate, what gives you the courage to not only stand for your truth, but to keep going just on a day-to-day?
You know, Gina, that's a really good question. I think for me, what keeps me going is just knowing that there's still so much work to be done. In a time like this where our trans sisters and brothers are being murdered, literally trying to be eradicated, it's now pivotal. If we don't do it, then when? So for me, when I hear about slain brothers and sisters to violence, it just even gives me a higher sense of urgency that we must continue. We will not be erased. We will say each other's names. They will not forget us.
So I saw in your bio that you grew up in Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up in Alabama, what was it like growing up in Alabama, and also what does it look like in Alabama to live in your truth?
You know, honestly, so I'm originally from Montgomery, Alabama, as you mentioned, and I'm telling you, you automatically think small town, very conservative, it's a red state. All of those things are very true. My family's religion is Southern Baptist, so that has a whole separate connotation. However, I was very fortunate to have parents who were very supportive, very loving. And so when I actually initially started my gender journey briefly at the age of 5, and then of course I went to elementary school, and so it was very binary, as we know schools can be, and so I had to go and be with little boys. But even at home I was still allowed to be very, feminine, or as my parents would call me, the delicate one out of all my brothers. And so having that love and support, and even from my high school as well, it's rare that I mention this, but I was voted by my senior class as most friendly, and I was able to take my senior pictures as a female, or female presenting at that time. And then also they got me a date for senior prom with a cisgender guy. So it shows you sometimes that small town America can surprise you.
Right, absolutely. That is a heartwarming story.
I gotta say, I'm a little taken aback by that. That's beautiful. And wow, that's really beautiful that they went out of their way for you. You don't hear those sorts of stories about the South, especially, you just hear these awful stories of racism and bigotry and everything else, and to hear something beautiful coming out of that's really gives me a little hope.
It does. It gave me hope too. And to be honest, before I got into my line of work, I just always had this assumption that all trans people were treated that way. I didn't know this idea of families kicking their loved ones out. And just so that, again, it goes back to the first thing about this sense of urgency, because now that I know that I'm more aware with being now in LA, it just makes me even more determined to really change the narrative and show that there's hope out there, and families can change and be possible of love, and just it's amazing.
Speaking of change and things that are affecting folks, how have you been personally affected by the Black Lives Matter movement, and what more do you think can be done to uplift and amplify queer and trans voices of color?
Absolutely. I've definitely been really affected by this, especially just from hearing about George Floyd, and then of course Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery. So many of our, Black cis as well as trans members have been murdered and it's just really heartbreaking. And for me, it's just wanting to do more and just wanting to make sure that I, as a Black trans woman, can elevate the voices of those who are no longer here. So, Lucky and I, yesterday, we were at the protest, peaceful protest, and it was absolutely amazing to see the thousands of members come out and support from a diverse spectrum of people. And so it, just really reignites the sense of that sometimes we can feel as a Black race that we're alone and that others don't understand. But to see that amount of people come out and support, it just again continues to inspire me to want to elevate those Black voices, especially those who are no longer here.
Thank you.
Love it. Beautiful.
So, to kind of round everything out, we have a really fun question for you.
Ooh.
Here's our fun question, right? So, what is it that you miss about Mississippi, being that you're still new to California and it's a fresh move? So, what exactly do you miss about Mississippi?
Honestly,
I don't, because we have Blossoms. We have Blossoms interview coming up, and Blossoms from Mississippi.
Yes.
So I've got a lot of that stuck. So let me do that again. All right. So we have a really fun question for you. So
Ooh.
This is a new move from Alabama, and you've only been here for about a year, almost like a year, just barely a year, right?
Yeah, literally a couple of days ago. It makes a year.
Okay.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you, my love. Thank you.
So, what do you miss about Alabama?
Oh, there is some yummy Southern dishes, Lucky and Gina, that you just will never experience unless you go into the deep South. You know what I mean? I'm used to like some good old collard greens, but not just kind of like the ones that you would think here in like a barbecue restaurant, but an actual, like it's a big difference. So it's just that sense of that home cooked meal that I would get, and of course my family too. Oh, I'm very close with them, and so being 2,500 miles away has definitely had its challenges. But I'm so lucky for platforms like this, like digital platforms where I can Skype and FaceTime, and so it really keeps me connected that way as well.
Awesome.
One of my favorites was Hush Puppies.
Oh, yes. Come on. Yes. Some good old Hush Puppies with tartar sauce.
Oh,
it's
you can't forget my catfish.
Yes. Come on now. You all know what I'm talking about. Oh.
So, Mallery, we absolutely adore you. We appreciate having you.
Thank you.
We want to thank you for being here and sharing your time with us. We absolutely adore your optimistic outlook on the work that you do. And albeit late, we want to officially welcome you to California.
Thank you.
Yeah, and appreciate you being an awesome advocate in our community. So is there anything else that you'd like to share or anything you'd like to plug? Now's your time.
Absolutely. So please feel free to follow me on IG at Mallery Jenna 90. That's MALLERYJENNA and 90. And you can also just get a little bit more information about what we do in Long Beach at Center LB_Trans Health. And you can follow. Special thank you to you both. You all are amazing allies. I consider you both dear friends and family. I'm from the South, so we always take on this connotation of family and loved ones. So just thank you for what you're doing. And again, it was such a pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're the best. Mallery, you're doing such amazing work at the center down in Long Beach. Thank you so much. Folks,
you're welcome, my love.
Support. Check out Mallery's amazing work at the center at Long Beach. Really.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, Lucky, our next guest is someone that would wind up on anyone's top 5 trans icon list. From her humble and challenging upbringing in Guadalajara, Mexico, where she fell into a deep cycle of drugs and crime, and then later, after immigrating to the United States, prisons and constant street violence, she committed herself to treatment for her addiction, to work on herself and learn the root cause of what was leading the life she was living. As she slowly began to build a better life for herself, her improbable survival also inspired within her a sense of duty to help others as she recovered her own life. One by one, she began to transform each challenge and each issue of her early life into the substance, basis, and gravitas for her current extraordinary work, activism, and life. In her bio, she states, "I am a miracle. I'm not supposed to be here. I'm really not supposed to be here." Well, the entire trans community thanks its lucky stars that she is here, for she is truly a miracle. A highly regarded, nationally and internationally recognized activist, community organizer, social justice advocate. She is the founder and president of the TransLatin Coalition. She is one of our most dynamic and tenacious leaders. Please welcome the one and only Bamby Salcedo.
Yay! Hello, Bamby, and how are you?
Bamby, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
How are you?
We're
Fantastic.
so honored to have you here. Thank you so much for spending a little time with us today.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to share space with all of you. Thank you.
So, Bamby, you've been at the forefront of the trans movement for so long. How do you stay so focused and inspired?
You know, I'm very lucky and privileged that I have been able to be doing the work that I do and that I have done for over 20 years. To be completely honest, the work that I do and the work that we do as an organization, and many of us that do work in the movement, understand that it is very taxing in our bodies and in our minds and oftentimes in our spirit. But what supports me for me to continue to get going really is, one, to be humble and to not forget where I come from, right?
So, Bambi, I had a question for you. How do you feel that your work fits into the scheme of things with respect to the Black Lives Matter movement?
Well, I mean, I think the work that we do as an organization and my involvement in the community as a whole and the multiple movements that I have been part of um, fits definitely right into the uprising of, you know, the injustices that our Black siblings continue to experience, right? I think um, what we know and what is coming more to light is that institutional racism and institutional oppression is something that has existed in our society for many, many years. In fact, it has been ingrained into our everyday living, uh, in that obviously was created to oppress not just Black people, but, you know, to oppress indigenous people, to oppress people of color, really, right? And so that all of that was driven by white supremacy, really, right? And so the work that we do fits right into the uprising of Black people, but also, you know, all of us. And I think it's important that we understand that um, that the work is not just intersectional, but it's collective, right? And I believe that the collective fight that we need to fight, it's the fight that is going to lead us into the liberation that we're all seeking.
So, Bambi, in your bio, you describe yourself as a community investment. Tell us a little bit about the amazing work that TransLatin Coalition does and how the community can invest in the life-saving work that you do.
Thank you, Lucky, for that question. You know, for me personally, when I refer to myself as a community investment, is a constant reminder of how my people has invested in me, right? It has been my siblings, my trans siblings, who have really uplifted me and supported me for me to become the person that I am today. You know, when we talk about also investing in our own community, right? I think it's important because then we can feel that we are contributing to the movement, right? Even if we're not right at the forefronts, right? Because, you know, being at the forefront is not for everybody, right? And that's true. But I think it's also important that we understand that we as trans people are coming into our power, right? And there are more and more trans-led organizations that are popping up all over the country, right? And so even though our community doesn't have the economic power to like seriously invest in our community, there's multiple ways that we can contribute for us to be a better place within our society, for us to have a better livelihood, right? And for us to have a better quality of life, right? And so we can all chip in into supporting and really advancing the trans movement, right? But in order for us to do that, obviously, one, we need to recognize that as individuals we have power, but also as a community we also have power. And so if we are able to understand and grasp and really portray that, right, then our power is going to be greater, and we're going to be able um, to transform our society, to transform the society that has marginalized us for many years. And I think that if we think of ourselves as an investment to the broader society too, right? Because we we deserve to be part of our society, despite the fact that society has always said that we should not exist, that our existence should not be part of the whole, right? When in reality, we are creators, right? We have been a sacred people, right? And so we have to understand that. We have to understand that because of the societal marginalizations that happen, um, they try to erase us, right? I mean, I think this is a great, there's a great Mexican proverb, right, that says that they tried to bury us, but they didn't know that we were seeds, right? And so I think right now we're in that moment. We're in a pivotal moment until we, like the seeds are giving those fruits, right? And so we need to invest in our own people, and we need to be able to grow and be fruitful and really um, harness, right, the fruits that we are going to build.
Amazing.
Absolutely.
Oh, beautiful. I love that proverb. I
Yes.
love that. That's really, really beautiful. Bambi, we've got to start wrapping things up, but I got one more question for you. And then we always try to have a little fun, get a little light with our guests. And one thing that I know I've been thinking this since it happened. One of your one of your well-known acts of visibility was when you and members of the TransLatina Coalition unfurled that massive, gigantic, beautiful trans flag at Game 5 of the 2018 World Series at Dodger Stadium. The question is, I gotta ask, how in the hell did you get that flag into Dodger Stadium at a World Series nonetheless?
Well, well, first let me just say that obviously, we had to do that to be visible, right, and to occupy space that traditional is not designed for us. right? But also, if you remember, in 2018, right, that was when the memo came out from the New York Times, in which it stated that the Trump administration was plotting into, reverting the, little gains that we had gained, right, like up until that point, right, from the Obama administration. And so, the community was sort of like obviously organizing and like being visual and vocal to make sure that that did not happen, right? And so for us as an organization, we are always thinking about, how are we going to make sure that the people see us and that our visibility is notable anywhere and everywhere, right? Because the work that we do as an organization, yes, it is true, we're the TransLatin Coalition, and yes, our focus is supporting Trans-Latinos and immigrants, right? But the work that we do really is to advance, the trans and gender nonconforming community as a whole, right? Because we believe that, if we're able to build the infrastructure that needs to happen in our community, then we are going to get to a better place, right?
Love it. Well, you definitely make things happen. Bamby, we cannot thank you enough for taking a little bit of time with us today. Really, this has truly been an honor and a pleasure to sit down with, someone who I consider, an icon, a shero, someone who's just a superhero in my eyes, and I'm sure in many, many, many other folks' eyes. Before we go, real quick, anything Trans-Latina Coalition has got coming up, or anything that you want to plug before we go?
Well, just really quick, I mean, I think it's important that we note, right, that the Trans-Latina Coalition is doing really great work, again, to build the infrastructure of our community. We are pushing for legislation to here in the state of California to pass, and we're very lucky to report that Assembly Bill 2218 passed the Assembly and went into the Senate. And so that is the Transgender Equity, Health and Equity Fund. And so we're advocating for translator organizations across the state to receive funding and to receive the support that they need in order to continue to thrive. Follow us in all kinds of social media and all kinds of hashtags and things.
You can find out more information at translatinacoalition.org. Check them out, really. And Bamby, thank you so much for spending some time with us, really, from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you for all you do for us, for our community. Thank you.
It's an honor. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with all of you, and much love and appreciation to all the beautiful and amazing people who are watching us. Thank you.
Thank you, Bamby.
I appreciate you so much. Blossom C. Brown is a Mississippi native, talented actress, vocal activist, professional tarot reader, and active producer known for Transfinite, 2019, TMI, and Starlit Diner in 2020. Blossom has been very boisterous in the world of advocacy. She was the first transgender woman to graduate from Mississippi University for Women with the help of Ellen DeGeneres, and she has made her voice heard at the 2019 Democratic Town Hall hosted by CNN and HRC. When she was given the mic and stood up for the lack of trans representation, she was quoted by the LGBT nation saying, "It is not fair for Black trans people to be erased from so-called safe LGBTQ space. We are excited to have such a fierce advocate in our community. Please welcome Blossom Brown."
Woo. Yes, Blossom.
Hello.
Yes,
Hi. How are you?
Wonderful. The one and only. Yes.
That's me.
We are so thrilled to have you, Blossom. Thank you so much for doing this. Really, we can't thank you enough. We know how busy you are, I'm sure. There's just a
Thank you for
million things
having
going
me.
on.
Thank you for having me.
Well, of course, you are a superhero of
Oh,
our
stop.
community. You know, full disclosure, I tell Blossom this whenever I see her. It's like, you let me know the minute you decide to run for office, because I want to be the campaign manager.
I got you. I promise.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I know very few people as dynamic and as amazing as you. And actually, that kind of leads me right into the first question that we had for you, and that is that you are very vocal in your advocacy. You know, from that amazing, wonderful, beautiful, powerful CNN moment to marching to just everything that you do. Tell us what is it that drives you to continue to be such a visible force, and not just to be an advocate and an activist, to be out, but to be front and center?
Yeah, honestly, my motivation is my community. Plain and simple. It is my community. It is the community that I come from, the community that I've had to learn to grow with and evolve with. Like I hold my community to my heart, and I just see how the world treats us. And I really want to be a better influence, a more positive influence in the world. And if that means going out in the streets and shouting that our lives matter, if it's out organizing, doing whatever it is I need to do, I'm going to be willing to do it for my community. Like now is the perfect time to do it. And, you know, I'm just really humbled, and I'm just really grateful that I get to do this work, that I get to sometimes go into some of these spaces and bring my community with me. I'm humbled. I'm so grateful for that.
Do you ever, I got just a little quick follow-up. Do you ever fear for your safety in going into certain spaces?
I do. I do fear for my safety. And you know what? I am very strategic about that. I'm very strategic about it because, you know, I have to think before I act. And so, you know, I really take the time to plan out, you know, what really needs to be said, how to say it. Because it's not always about what you say, it's always about how you say it. And then, you know, whenever I'm in a situation where I don't feel safe, then I know how to deal with that. But that hasn't always been easy. That hasn't always been the case. You know, coming from a place of a very conservative state, you know, and then moving here, it was just like, okay, things have to shift, things have to change. So those are just things I've learned to implement. But yes, I always think about my safety for sure. But at the same time, trans people are willing to put their safety on the line just for justice.
Yes.
And you know that kind of leads into our next question, right? Speaking of Mississippi, we did, as we mentioned in your intro, you did grow up you're a Mississippi native, and so what did it look like to grow up in Mississippi? What did it look like to come into your identity?
Yeah, it was very difficult, I will say. You know, Mississippi being in the Bible Belt and in the Deep South, it's all about religion. Religion is kind of the one thing that kind of takes over everything. Like, you got to be in church, you got to go by the Bible, you have to do this, you have to do that. And I will say, I lived for many years in a closet. I lived where a lot of things were hidden inside of me. And I finally got to the breaking point of where I needed to like release and actually become my true self. I was dealing with a lot of isms down there: racism, sexism, classism, mostly racism from other people. And one thing about it, you know, I always say, I'm not that far removed from Jim Crow. My grandparents went through that. My grandparents saw the sit-ins, the lynchings. They saw all of that. My parents were born at the end of that. So it kind of reminds me of that in my activism, actually. I kind of really just think about, you know, so many of our Black leaders that have led the way for me to even have opportunity like that. And so, you know, that's, you know, I don't regret being from Mississippi. I think Mississippi has a great agriculture. I think the people there are amazing. There's just a few small bad apples. I just wish that Mississippi would move forward fast enough like other states have. And I just think that with the leadership on the ground, eventually they will. I have a lot of hope in them. I have a lot of faith. I keep in contact with them. You know, they're trying to make change down there now. And, you know, it really, really inspires me to know that wherever I go, I want to inspire change, and I want to make sure that I'm making the change.
Well, I know that if you look at the definition of inspiration in the dictionary, I believe there's a photo of Blossom C. Brown right next to that.
Oh, you're amazing.
This is someone who is an inspiration.
Absolutely.
Every single day. And
Thank
Blossom,
you.
I got to ask, how have you been personally affected by the tragedy of George Floyd, this movement that has come from it, the Black Lives Matter movement that has come from it, and how do you feel that the Black LGBTQ community can and should be more included in that?
Absolutely. I think the death of George Floyd really did affect me personally because he was Black, and I'm also Black. I'm proud to be Black. We have a lot of work to do in the Black community. I'm not going to sit up here and sugarcoat that because, you know, as part of this big Black Lives movement, I feel all Black lives should be included. And Black trans people have not always been included in the conversation. We can talk about all day long how we are included, how we're for all Black lives, but your actions have to meet with those words. And you have to also understand something, that some of these same Black men that we are going out protesting for are also killing Black trans women. And we are so afraid of having that conversation. And it's getting to the point of, okay, when are we going to have this conversation? When are we going to work from within? Yes, we should all be in solidarity and unity. But again, when someone's left out of the movement, it's not unity, period. It's not unity. And, you know, it has been very frustrating for me to feel like I'm left out of this movement. Several weeks back, I actually went to 3 protests back to back to back. And I remember shouting Tony McDade, who was the Black trans man that was killed, his name, and no one would want to shout with me. And this is supposed to be in the Black Lives movement. And honestly, I walked home 3 miles crying my eyes out because I just couldn't believe that my own Black people couldn't see my existence. So, you know, we just have a lot of work to do. I think a lot more conversations have to come out of what has happened in this world. We are definitely in a disruption, but the disruption has brought such positive change. So much change has happened. And I think Black people are finally beginning to get the reparations that they deserve. I think Black people are finally getting the attention that we have been needing for centuries. And so I'm grateful for that. I just think that we have a lot of work on the inside to change.
Right. So, you know, we have absolutely enjoyed you, but we have one wrap-up question that's going to be fun. So we know you have moved here from Mississippi.
Yes.
So it's like a 2-part question. So first, why California? And if anything, what do you miss about Mississippi?
Okay, so why did California? So actually, I kid you not, I actually dreamed of living in California as a kid. I was like, I used to tell my brothers and sisters, I'm going to move to California. I'm going to move to California. And ironically, before I moved here, I almost moved to DC. But the thing is, I'm not really a political person. And so I just knew I wasn't going to be happy. And, you know, I just felt like California was a place where I wanted to explore so many different things, like, going to school for nursing, acting, producing, you know, just trying out new things. And California has definitely afforded me that opportunity. I've only been here for almost 4 years, and so much has happened in my life that I just love. I love my life. I love what I get to do. I feel so grateful to be around such positive, high vibrational people. The one thing I would say I miss about Mississippi is my family. That's the one thing that I miss. I really miss my mom, my dad, my step father, my brother, my sisters, nieces, nephews. I miss them all, but I know that they're out, that they're rooting me on. My mom is one of my biggest supporters. And even though I'm not there in the physical, I just know that they're here with me, and you know, they're always supporting me, still getting on my butt whenever I'm doing wrong. And you know, I don't regret it. I don't regret moving out here. And my mom sees that. My mom is just like, you should not ever move home. You really shouldn't. Like, you should keep going. You should keep thriving. And that's what I really intend to do. California has been really, really good to me. I've had my hardships like everybody else, yes, but I'm just so grateful for this journey that's the overall picture for me.
Has your parent, have they ever come to visit you?
No, ironically, my parents, they don't like going on airplanes. They would rather pack everybody in a van and travel across the country. They would rather drive for 3 days, literally, just to come see me. And I'm just like, my brother may fly on the plane. He likes to fly, but everybody else is like, no.
Awesome. Well, Blossom, you know, it was an absolute pleasure to have you. We appreciate you being such a strong and fierce advocate for our community. And thanks for being here, chatting with us. Is there anything else you'd like to share? Anything you want to plug? Anything you'd like viewers to kind of walk away with?
Yeah, I just want everybody to take care of each other. And I want everybody to realize that until we are all free, no one is free. Until everyone has basic human rights, none of us have basic human rights.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Blossom. And like I said, you let me know when you decide to run.
I got you. Don't worry about it.
Absolutely.
I will talk to y'all soon. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you.
Blossom. You're a complete superhero. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, love. All right, we'll talk soon.
Wow, Gina, that was phenomenal.
I'm blown away by all the awesomeness, Luckie. What an amazing lineup. What an amazing bunch of people.
Oh my goodness. So we would like to thank all of our guests and thank you to all of our viewers out there watching. Next, grab a drink with Alexander Rodriguez and join him in On the Rocks with LGBT stars, including RuPaul's Drag Race Mayhem Miller and Honey Davenport, Emmy winner Ja Rodriguez, and current Emmy nominee and trans activist Scott Schofield, just to name a few. And at 7 p.m. Pacific, Shane will be back with more live performances in Queer Cella. Good night, folks.
Night, everybody.